Everyone, to the Hadley Public Schools School Committee meeting for November 2024. Do I have a motion to call this meeting to order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Terrific. We are going to hang on here. I'm going to I'm going to admit, and I'm just going to, you'll have to bear with me as I juggle a number of things this evening. But hopefully this will be smooth and without much trouble. So I'll start by saying that Annie cannot be here today. Her family suffered a devastating loss this weekend, and she's out on bereavement. She initially suggested that she would attend this evening, and just it's important that she be with her family tonight. So we are going to we're going to make some major modifications to the agenda. If you've accessed the agenda, you'll see a number of items that are struck through. We are going to defer those to the December meeting when we have Annie and our full court press back. And we are going to hold public comment, but just in a short while, because there are two groups of people here tonight that we want to make sure that we tackle their agenda items first, and then send them off before we go through the remainder of the agenda, including public comment. So we're going to start with item 4, presentation discussion items, in particular item 4B. And I'm really honored to be sharing this. I want to first note that this is one of Annie McKenzie's favorite things to do, which is to recognize high achieving students and to boast and brag about them. And so I am so, I guess I'm the lucky recipient of this honor this evening. Maggie Potter is an accomplished student and athlete. Her GPA exceeds 4.0. She has successfully completed college courses and advanced placement courses and is currently taking AP Calculus, Biology, US History, and Physics, in addition to taking early college classes. She's been captain of the varsity soccer, softball, and basketball teams. Maggie is a leader. She is the Key Club president, school social media page manager, a class officer, and completed leadership certification through UMass. She volunteers in the community and advocates for people who are often forgotten, those living in poverty and with food insecurity. Thank you, Maggie. Maggie, Annie and I are so proud of the remarkable person that you are and all that you've accomplished. And I am grateful that you have generously shared your gifts with our school community. Congratulations and thank you for everything that you do. And congratulations to Jocelyn Potter and Andrew Potter. You should be so proud. Feel free to unmute and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much for recognizing me. I couldn't have done it without the support from the school, my family, and all the teachers. So thank you so much.
It's wonderful, Maggie. Thank you.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
That's good.
Can you say a little bit about the award?
I can tell you that Annie gives this award every year. Given that it's the MASS award, that would suggest that it's the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Award. And I believe every superintendent honors a high achieving high school student each year. I recall past recipients, the Cal Safrans. I believe Yuki Ashida maybe have been last year's recipient, but we've had some really incredible students come through our school committee meeting and be honored. And Maggie, you are in an amazing league of high achieving students. So thank you again. All right. Well, that I don't think it can get much better than Okay, great. So we'll move on to the other items of business. And so the next item is for the classroom field trip. And here to tell us about that is Susan Duncan.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Congratulations, Maggie. That was really awesome. So deserving. You're very deserving of that award. So the Nature's Classroom's the same trip that we have been putting on, I think, for 19 years. This will be our 19th year if we go this year. Nothing has changed since last year. We're still going to the Ocean Park site in Maine. We do the same program every year. It changes a little bit with the classes that they offer. You know, I do a little survey with what the kids want to do, and then hopefully get them to offer those classes. So but you're all familiar with it, I believe. Does anybody have any questions about the Nature's Classroom trip this year?
Well, first of all, I'll just say that this is a real highlight for all the students, even for the kids of my own that have gone through this. So thank you so much for continuing to provide it. I think kids look forward to entering their middle school and high school years in order to go on this trip. And so thank you for continuing to do it. I personally don't have any questions, but I'll open it up to my colleagues to see if there are any other questions.
I just miss chaperoning.
You know, the hardest year is getting the kids to have a year to disconnect. And I think it's even more important now to get them to disconnect from their computers and their cell phones and experience connecting with each other. And that's the whole program, is around connecting with each other, forming a community together, which is why I think it's really great we do in the 7th grade. And then again, learning by hands-on outdoor learning with the different subjects we can connect with while we're there.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say thank you. I think the highlight of the meetings for me is the field trips when you guys come to present. And this one hits a little bit more. My son will be in 7th grade next year, so I'm hoping to chaperone next year. But I'm really excited. Now it hits a little bit more to home. I've always been excited, but now I'm like, oh, you know, it's a really amazing experience for the 7th graders. So different and so amazing.
While I don't have any questions, I would love to make a suggestion, and that is, if you had any photographs, and I understand that, you know, some students can be photographed and some cannot, and of course you would need to have their permission, or maybe a photograph that doesn't necessarily reveal a child's, you know, is unidentifiable. It would be wonderful to bring that experience to life for the school committee in just a couple of pictures in your next proposal.
I definitely can do that. I take pictures every year and I share it with the class advisor for that class so they can put in their senior slideshow. And then we definitely look at pictures when we get back that we've taken while we're there. But I've never posted anywhere. So I can definitely do that, because I definitely have pictures from when I presented to the kids of like the site
Perfect.
that we go to and all of that. So I can do that for next time.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Duncan. All right. Any other questions before we vote on this? Okay, seeing none. Do I hear a motion to approve this coming year's Nature's Classroom field trip?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Tara, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sue.
Okay. We are going to move next to item 4F, and that's the donor recognition for the Hopkins Academy Athletic Field. And here to tell us about that is Chris. Hi, Chris.
Okay, if I could, we actually have. I'm sorry, I'm out of order. I was looking at the agenda. I thought we had an item before that. So in your meeting packages attached to the agenda, we have kind of an example of the sign that we're going to put there. Unfortunately, when I asked them for a mock-up of the sign, they put the same text on both sides of the V, so it's not really going to look like that. I did attach something that would tell you what the text is on the first side, the second side, and then the third side. It's a triangular shaped sign, 3 rectangle sides, and it's going to go in the corner right where the walkway for the parking lot enters the fields. As you enter going in, you'll have the CPA and the Hopkins trustees facing that way. Then as you walk by it, you'll see all of the other donators, and then in the back that's visible from the sidewalk, you'll be able to see all of the championship seasons that Hopkins has had. We limited it to just state and Western Mass champions, otherwise we'd need an extra sign. So we didn't really want to do that, but basically I'm looking for your views on the sign, and if it's okay to go ahead with it, if you have any suggestions for changes.
I think this looks terrific. I would, the only note that I would have is that we really make sure, double check our lists to make sure that all our sponsors are listed before we go to print. But I'm sure that was already on someone's list. Let's open it up to my colleagues. Any other comments or thoughts on this sign design? Christine, Ethan, Tara, Paul, I'm sure you've already weighed in on it.
I'll say two things. One, I just want to make sure there's going to be enough space on those Hopkins Academy champions for future champions. I just want.
That's a good point.
I'm sure there will be, but
There will be, yeah.
Looking forward to my kids. No, I guess the only thing I wanted to have, and I don't even know if this is worth the conversation, is I don't know if we'll ever add lights to the area or if we do anything else. And will there? It looks like there'll be space to add donors if at some point we were to add on to the project. I'm just thinking about the future of it.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, because they didn't give me a mock-up of the side with the majority of the donors on it, I will just make sure that we will have that. Another thing we could also do, since we would already have the poles up, is we could always add a second sign underneath it. Maybe not 3 by 4, but maybe 3 feet wide by 2 feet tall or something. And it won't be down to the ground still, so that might be another option. But I can certainly speak with them and see how much space that'll take up.
I do have a quick question. Is there a reason why it's blue and white? The seal and not gold and white?
We gave them the seal. I'll have to check on that. To be honest, I don't remember if it was golden and blue or white and blue, but I can certainly check. That's the artwork that we had here at the district.
Oh, cool, because our colors are gold and white.
Yeah. Like I said, I'll check.
Okay.
Chris, when you keep referencing they, who are they?
That would be Amherst Copy.
Okay.
Sorry, that's who's doing the sign. Yeah, we gave them the artwork that we had, and they said, if it wasn't high resolution enough, they could always rebuild it. But I will double check and make sure. The artwork is white and blue, but I'll make sure that if the seal itself is gold and blue, that we have it with the appropriate colors.
Chris, I have a question for you. You raise an important point. Amherst Copy does signs that are sort of printed and laminated. Is this like the kind of sign that we'll need to replace because it's but or is it like brass, on materials that are not going to weather?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a brass sign. Brass sign would be, I don't know, $15,000 maybe. And obviously we don't have the budget for that. I did tell them that we wanted, the absolute best material. So it's an aluminum sign. So we won't have to worry about rust. The hardware is also aluminum. And the poles are pressure treated wood, but I told them I know like on my deck, I have them, they're just sleeves that fit over the 4x4s. And so that way they always stay painted. It's like a vinyl sleeve. And we don't have to worry about, the wood eventually needing to be stained or anything like that. And I told them that, the sign is out in the field. So obviously the sun is going to hit it all day, and to make sure that they used, the most UV resistant materials that they could. That being said, if it ever became an issue where we needed to replace it, it would be a fairly easy replacement to just, have them redo the sign. So, I mean, the majority of the cost is obviously in the blank aluminum and the poles and all the materials and the installation. So we could have them do that. But yeah, I'm not going to lie. It's obviously made of materials that are vinyl and, as he said, very UV resistant. But I would imagine after, 10 or so years of being exposed to the elements that they might need to be refreshed.
But low cost enough that we could redesign it and add on some additional years of championship wins. And
Absolutely. Yes, we could.
okay, great. All right. Do you need a vote from us on this?
It's not really something that requires a vote. It's just something that I wanted to get your approval on. I did need to mention one other thing, and that is that we have some donors in red and some donors in green on the list. So those are the large donors, and what we proposed was to have the red donors have a thank you included on the scoreboards, probably 2 on each scoreboard, and the green donors would have like an aluminum plaque on the backs of the benches, just to, kind of honor the fact that they gave, very large donations. And again, I would just like your thoughts and opinions on that.
I like the concept. I like the 3-panel. I would like to see further understanding of what a side's going to look like. So that one side, is it really just going to be those words? It's going to be a huge 3-foot thing with just those words. I mean, I think maybe there's more we could do on the graphic design piece. I'm not sure if Amherst Copy is the place, but just to make, if this is going to be up for a long time, I saw the different colors. I didn't know what the distinction is. Do we want to explain that to the public? Do we not? If I'm Steve Lewis, Subaru has been incredibly generous. They're on one side and they're red, but they're not on the side of the CPA, which has also been super generous. So, maybe there's some more language we can add to explain what the CPA has done, what the trustees have done, and just. So I like the concept, but I would spend a little bit more time, and I'm happy to help with it to change the language a little bit.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I mean, I was a little disappointed that when I gave them the text, all I got was the same stuff on both sides, but, that being said.
Great idea. And I love the idea.
Get it for the meetings.
I think that, and I love the idea of putting the championship. I hadn't thought of that. I think that's a great idea. So I don't know, like you said, you don't need a vote, but if I'm curious what the others think, what we could do is work on the text a little bit, bring it back. I don't imagine there's a rush for this, Chris. It's not like we need to decide.
There's not. No, they won't be able to install it until, the ground thaws in the spring.
Yeah.
So we certainly have time. One other thought also could be to have, instead of a 3-sided sign, really just have a 2-sided sign, instead of having 3 sides, just have a front and a back, and we could angle it so that it would still be, highly visible to the walkway coming from the parking lot. We could have all donors on one side and all championships on the other. And because I think you're right. I think it looks a little awkward with only 2 on that entire sign. And that's a 3x4 sign. So, pretty tough to fill it up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So the colors are just for illustration purposes on here, right?
That's
not
correct. Yeah, I
like
wanted to just
straight-
let you
okay,
know
making
that
sure.
the red's going to the scoreboard, the green ones are going
Right.
to the benches, and then they're all on the sign.
Right.
Paul, I really appreciate you volunteering to work with the team that is designing this. It does need a little bit more, and I welcome your thoughts there. And maybe Amherst Copy isn't the best at putting together the graphic design of it. So, are there any talents that we might be able to deploy in our collective universe that that would make this really shine and sing? I don't oppose a three-sided sign versus two. I think three-sided might be more secure in light of like the wind that can come whipping across those fields, and
Right.
maybe just a little bit more real estate to either share the story of the project, perhaps like the original donation or I don't know. I mean, all the way to the phases and the contributions, and maybe just call out the more generous donors, the where the big gifts came from. Or I think there's a lot you could do with this. So and given that we don't have a rush to do this,
Mhm.
waiting for ground to thaw, we've got 3-4 months potentially to like get it right. And
Yeah.
Just a personal, picky thing might be making the state champion one a little bigger. Not that I know anyone on that team or anything,
Yes,
but I'm a little biased, but
yeah.
you
Yeah, I think
it's great.
the 2 or 3, I'm kind of with you, Humira. You make a good point, though, actually, that certainly the wind does howl there, so something more stable. And I do like that idea of showing the championship. So I'm happy to to work with Chris, and I'm sure Fred Shagel has been engaged too, to see if we can. Yeah, I mean, there's some ideas. I think, and also, I'm definitely not the design person. Trust me, you don't want to ask me to help with design, but I can help facilitate. So maybe there are better design minds out there that we can tap into.
And maybe we could just like put out into the universe that if you're in the Hadley community and you love this project, and maybe you've contributed to it already, and you're a company that's donated and you have a great graphic designer that you could lend to it, us for just a few hours of work, we welcome you to be in touch with Chris Desjardins at the school, and then he'll put you in touch with the team.
I love Ethan's idea of maybe having another section on that third sign for future championship winners. What is it?
Definitely. And future donors, I agree.
Yeah.
Stadium lights.
There you go.
Oh gosh,
There you go.
that's a big ask. Okay, all right. Neighbors. She's joking.
Yay.
She's joking.
One
Ah.
day. It would not go on till like 11 at night. It would be till like 8 or 9 when a game ended. But anyways,
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah, one day.
My kids will be out of the school, but
Yeah.
it'll
I will say, Chris, you brought up the idea of like some recognition on the scoreboards, and I'm fully supportive of that too in some ways. And whether it's scoreboards, I know there was one concept I think Annie had once mentioned ideas on some of the benches too. So I'm open to those ideas as well.
yeah, I especially like the bench idea.
Yeah.
I know the scoreboards, like you're looking at the scoreboards just to get an idea of what that score is. Your eyes are going right to the score. But those benches, they're up close, and you spend a lot of time in that area walking or sitting, watching a game, and that's really plum real estate. Yeah. So definitely let's make sure that if you're a big donor and you're on the scoreboard, you're not left off the other option, because then you might, who knows where the eyes gravitate to more, the seating area versus so something to think about. If we inadvertently, slight the big donors because they're out there in the field versus closer to where the humans are. All right, great. Thank you so much, Chris, and look forward to seeing the next iteration. Thanks, Paul, for donating your time to help bring it to life, and look forward to seeing it. Okay, and Chris, you're up next. You are going to tell us about, let's see, item 4J, the acceptance of donation of a donation from Home Depot.
Yes, so, as we know, any donations to the school need to be accepted and approved by the school committee. So Home Depot was generous enough to donate a number of items to the schools for a workshop in class time. They donated paint, foam brushes, a whole bunch of wood project kits and stranger danger kits to the Hopkins Life Skills program. And the teacher of that program just asked us to make sure that you were aware of the generosity of Home Depot and just to get your approval on accepting them.
Great. First of all, thank you, Home Depot. We're very grateful for your contribution and supporting our Hadley kids. Do I hear a motion to accept the donation from Home Depot?
Moved.
Second?
Thanks, Ethan and Christine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. And Chris, you're up next for item 4L, the locker room update.
Okay, so the locker rooms, I reached out, as you know, a few months back, I mentioned that the cost of the locker rooms seemed to have been going up dramatically, even with cuts we made. And ultimately, in your packet, what we have is kind of the design that they came up with, and there's some colors on the design. So I just wanted to walk you through that. But the end result of this is that we don't have the funds to do the entire project of both sides of the locker room. We're roughly $1 million short. So, I mean, obviously it's not like we could say, oh, we can make up that difference quite easily. That's not the case. And the fact that the price went up so dramatically in between when they first gave us a quote and then, let's take out some of these things and see what it does to the price. And it went up another 400,000. Is basically telling me that, okay, we're going to have to, just rethink this. And so what we did was I met with them a couple of weeks ago and suggested that we might want to cut the project in half to more or less meet our budget. And what they did was, if you look at the plan that was in your package, you can see that the right-hand side, the girls' locker rooms, that's all redone. I mean, by far the worst of the two locker rooms is the girls' side. And so that needed to be done. Then on the boys' side, at the bottom of the picture, you'll see that it's kind of an orange color. And that will be redone. Those will be basically gender-neutral bathrooms that Anna not having the Santa cans anymore. We'd be able to just open that back door. People could go in. We'd lock the gym. We'd lock the locker room and the hallways so that, basically that's the area that they could access. But I think anyone who needed to use a restroom would find the ones in the building a little bit better than using the ones outside. And so that would solve this existing problem as well. And then at the top of that page, we have in blue, there's not a lot of changes there. You're basically just moving things around and adding some walls so that AD office could be created. The AD office is important because right now what the officials do is they go down, they change up in the faculty, the staff room. And so what that means is that they basically keep the hallways open so that the refs at halftime can go and before the game go down and change, and then after the game go and change into their street clothes from their ref uniform. The problem is that we end up having, shall we say, some visitors in the hallways during the game that, we probably don't want. And by adding that athletic director office, we can have the refs change in there and that we could lock off the entire school so that, it solves that problem. And the cost to do that back portion was very, very small because, again, not much is changing. We do some refinishing and add the walls for the coach's office. And And so this comes in slightly above the budget at just under 1.1 million, but that's their estimate. Bidding might come a little higher or lower than that. We don't know, but certainly I think a bid might bring out, because they're bidding against others, it might bring out some more preferred pricing for us. So again, I'm looking for your feedback, your thoughts on this, to see what you might like us to do.
Thank you, Chris. I do have a question, and this question may be partly directed towards you and partly towards Christine. And that is, we told the town that we were going to be doing the boys and the girls locker room, and we have a high degree of respect with the town. We tend to, ask for some pretty substantial things, and we have a track record, at least in this last decade, of having those things approved. And I worry about saying, well, we got 3/4 of it, or like 2/3 of it done, or just the girls' side. So I wonder, do we move forward with this partial plan? And I know the boys' locker room did get some kind of investment or upgrade at some point in its lifetime. So it isn't the original like the girls is, and the girls was what was chronically in need of being updated. But still, do we go to the town and say, okay, we went out there, we learned otherwise, it's going to cost way more, we're returning the money to the town, and we're going to start over. And that might be like looking at our 10-year capital plan. Our geothermal project comes in, and we've got some other things. So or augment the original with the additional needed to complete the project. But in essence, do we do this in a way that is transparent with the town and revisit, or go with the partial and run the risk of, wait a second, you promised this and then you gave us this, and what are you going to do the next time you come to us with geothermal? Is it going to be, you're asking for multiple millions, and are you going to end up doing just like a portion of it? So I think it's a conversation I want to have with the committee, and I'm really keen to get your thoughts, in particular, Christine, as you're on the capital committee and you know the town and the finance crew, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't see it as not being transparent. There's some things we can't control. What is the difference that we're looking at? For what did we end up getting? Off the top of my head, I'm just not. How much more money would we need to accomplish what is there now?
Chris?
1.1, right?
It was just under 1.1. Yeah.
Okay, and what did we get from the town?
$1,065,000.
Okay, so we're not looking at much difference there, which I'm sure we could easily, find that without a huge problem. The girls' locker room, I think if we put it off any longer, is that was really, it would be nice to do both, but it's the girls' locker room that really needs the work done. And it has been promised for way too long, and people haven't come through on it. And I don't want to do that again. I've had people, ask me, so when are they starting the girls' locker rooms? Because it really is that nasty. And I don't think that we should hold off. The boys' locker room, I think by showing like the things that are showed being done, that'll be a huge help. It's not nearly, that was done in my first couple of years of teaching. We had the new locker rooms for the boys. So, theirs is much nicer. And I really do not want to keep pushing this down the road. You
Yeah,
know, again, it's also a matter of it's not handicap accessible either.
that's
So-
a problem.
Yeah.
And the girls' side is not handicap accessible. Are you saying the boys' side already is?
I don't know, Chris, is that, I think they don't have a step into their shower, right?
They do. It's
They
not
do?
a step up, but it's a step over, basically. There's about
Okay.
a 5-inch wall, for lack of a better term, that you have to step over to get in them.
Mm-hmm,
And the showers are basically used for storage, but again, you know,
right,
someone should be able
right.
to get into every area of the locker.
right.
I'd like to hear from the other members of the committee on this, and but I'll just add one other thing, like a question in my mind is if we go with the plan to address these areas that are highlighted in this diagram, are there cosmetic things or minor things that one can do beyond major structural changes to the boys' side that address, some key, like new coat of paint, removing that step up. Is it possible to just get rid of that step up? And it isn't a permanent solution. It isn't the overhaul of the boys' room, but or that I remember there was this door that like didn't open the bathroom the full way. Could we add a different kind of door there? Are there minor things one can do to just address some key concerns, but not the whole thing? No.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it depends on what the bids would come in at. I mean, the unfortunate thing with this is, we gave the existing plans that we had to Colliers and said, price this out for us, as they did with the entire capital plan. We've kind of been finding, and we built in some pretty solid annual inflations to what their estimates were, but their estimates were low. And so unfortunately, I'm seeing this on a lot of capital projects where, they said it was this, and boy, we can't get it done for that, So it's become a little bit of a challenge, really, as far as that goes. But I think, basically, the ceilings certainly in the boys' locker room would be fixed as part of the geothermal project, really, where we would put all new ductwork and new heating units in there, and so therefore, we would replace the ceiling. That's a big deal because the ceilings in the boys' side are pretty bad, really. It's a sheetrock ceiling, unfinished, and let's just say they weren't terribly picky about cutting holes in the sheetrock. So we weren't looking at precision cuts when that was done. And so, that could certainly be done again as the new heating units go in. I think that would make a big difference. As far as cutting of the little riser that they would have to go over, that could be done. I'd really have to ask because, I mean, it's tile, but I don't know if they're just tile blocks, in which case that would be fairly easy, or if it's tile covering something else. I mean, I suppose anything could be removed, I mean, even if it's concrete underneath, you could certainly cut and jackhammer and then refinish it again. So yeah, that's certainly an option as well.
Thank you, Chris. Ethan, Tara, Paul?
Can I ask a bit of a silly question? I'm looking at this and I'm hearing you guys, and it sounds like, Humaira, I totally get what you're saying with like respects to the town and trying to be conscious of the money that we're spending. Is there a world, and you guys can tell me I'm crazy, is there a world in which we could move both the girls and the boys to the new locker room and have the boys' locker room be the visiting locker room until we are able to finish this project whenever it is? And that way everyone could have access to, I don't know if it's enough space. I'm just looking at like 28 lockers for the home locker room, 18. I don't know if both sides have showers. I assume they would. I'm trying to get a better sense of what those locker rooms are used for. Is it just for the athletic games? Is it for gym? Is there a world in which, the girls and the boys could be on the same side? Obviously there's that door there. And then, in a way to let everybody have access to that. And then I'm going to shut up now and let you guys tell me that it's not possible.
That's an interesting point.
I I mean, it could be possible. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure because of, with game scheduling, you're gonna have the boys would have to, or depending which half of the locker room they would get, that means somebody would have to be cutting through the gym to go into the locker room. And then the other would be coming from the outside. So you have where we only have, you'd have the boys walking through the girls' basketball game, or you might have them, soccer. You'd have, I don't know. It could be a hassle. You'd have to probably talk to Eric about
I
this.
see that happening a lot anyways, like with the basketball games. I see a lot of kids going in that back door by the where this in this diagram it says storage and AD's office. Like I see a lot of traffic going in through there. Maybe because I'm usually in the auditorium and I'm not.
And that only goes to the men's. That only goes to the boys' side. There's
Right.
not. This will be a new entrance we've never had before. Because that's where
Right.
the jazz band is.
Meaning they're already traveling through the auditorium,
Yeah.
the gymnasium in order to get through a door that goes into the locker. This would just make it on the other side, and it would be on the same side as the girls. Like that's a very compelling question, Ethan.
But I guess I don't see, what's the value? I mean, if you're saying we redo the girls, partially do the boys, you'd still have the boys. And honestly, from my experience of coaching, I don't think you want them together on game days or practice days. And I don't know if it's used for PE, Christine. I don't know if folks change for PE anymore.
Nope, they do.
My experience is you don't want those high school kids, boys and girls, together in that same locker room.
Well, I think in that model, Ethan, you're talking about a very
There's a door, right?
bolted door.
Yeah, and
Right.
with you guys, like that idea simply came from kind of Humira. Your point is there may be some people in town that say like, you guys were going to do this entire project. Now you're only doing 60% of it. My son's not going to be able to enjoy the locker room. I don't know that people are going to say that, but that was just kind of like an idea of like that way Hopkins Academy could enjoy the new locker room while the visitors enjoy the older space. But again, to that point, as I'm saying that, I'm thinking about how we'd have to create a separation of that space for the girls and the boys visit.
Yeah, that's a separation. My concern would be if you bolt that door, is that going to be a violation for like fire?
The same thing going through my head as well.
Because there'll only be one exit out of that
Well,
one door.
So if there's a general visitors locker room, that could be a group of men there anyways, right? That could be like a boys visiting team.
Yes, it always has been that way.
Right. So it's going to be bolted anyways for that reason. So
I guess that's another good question to ask the designs, Chris, is to that point, like, are we going to want that separation to be locked? Is it not going to be locked? Is there going to be a separate? I don't know. That's an interesting point as well.
And the not so deteriorated current boys side could become the home side, and not the home side, the visiting side. It's in theory, which kind of is a nice sort of separation of like Hopkins versus another.
And then, but you would have co-ed.
No, yeah, you'd still have it separate. It's always been, the girls' room was always used as the visiting team for the boys, but not for the girls. I don't know why it was like that, but the boys, we always had the girls' teams together on one side, but we would have the opponent for the boys in the girls' locker room.
To break up,
It was kind of crazy.
preemptively break up any fights. And
Yeah, I guess I don't, but it was, and then we still had girls who were coming home from their basketball games and they couldn't get into the locker room. So, there's always going to be something. I just think that we can, we can work that out and we can figure, and if it can be done, I guess we can do it. I just really don't want to hold off on, I think that it would be worse if we, push this down the road more.
Girls have gotten the shaft for a long time.
Yeah, they really have.
Very, very, very long time. And this project originally began as a girls' locker room project,
It did.
and it morphed into a girls and boys locker room project. So I'm in favor. I totally hear what you're saying, and I can get behind that. Tara, we haven't heard from you.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts after listening to you all talk. So just to point out, maybe I'm wrong, Ethan, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were suggesting this as a temporary solution, right? So this wasn't a permanent thing. This was just something that would be temporary until we could afford to get the boys' locker room done, is what I understand there. I agree with Christine. I don't want to wait any longer on the girls' locker room. I think it needs to be done. And originally it was a girls' locker room project. I agree with Humira, maybe less about transparency, but more about communication. If anybody either watched or went to the most recent town meeting, there's a lot more concern, and not just amongst residents, but amongst our boards about financials. So while the town, again, has always been very supportive, it might become a little bit more, we may have to, yes, frugal, or, they may start inquiring with a little bit more questions in regards to why and when, right? So I definitely think it's a good idea to communicate with them and explain where we're at and explain our goal. Here's what we have. Here's what we found out. Here's our goal and how we'd like to move forward. I can appreciate the idea of this boys' locker room kind of fixing part of it. But ultimately, I don't know that I'm that fond of it, because then we're spending money to potentially down the road spend more money to replace the entire thing. And then the portions that we've kind of adjusted may get adjusted again. So I'm kind of in the all or nothing with the boys' locker room.
The handicap accessible pieces, like the
Yeah.
ledge and the door, is really the two things that I think about. But Christine, you have your hand.
In the ceiling.
I'm looking at the diagram, and so essentially, are we pushing back? Because right now you walk in the door and there's a storage closet in front of you. Okay, that's where the ballroom is. So now, does that mean in order to get storage and laundry and the AD office in that spot, how much room are we taking? Like, is that completely new construction that we're gonna have to be doing walls, or are we fitting it within that space we have? Because that's pretty small. You muted. Mute.
You're on mute, Chris.
You're muted.
It was brilliant what I was saying. What I was saying was that any solid wall on the plan is new construction.
Okay.
Any hollow wall that you see with, two
Mhm.
lines in the space
Okay.
in between is existing wall space. So, if I'm looking at the boys' side, the blue area, you can see in storage and laundry, there's a little piece of a wall there.
Yeah.
And really that's just, there's a water,
Mhm.
a bottle filler there. And, they had that bottle filler coming out. I mean, basically I don't think it's a bottle filler. I think it's actually a water fountain, and it's not used right now. They're shut off. So they just had that removed and putting a wall in its place. And then really the only other wall that they're building is just building out where the AD office is. So,
Mhm.
I think it was a $10,000 job to get that entire area done.
Can
It
I ask-
wasn't.
And I think
inexpensive.
that is necessary only because, again, you had mentioned the refs are changing in the teacher's room. And that means that, we've been leaving the hallways open so that they can get in and out.
Can I ask a question? Chris. So say we were to move forward with the highlighted suggestions. You know, when we talk about eventually updating and renovating the boys' locker room, would it be outside of the orange and blue areas? Like we would just end up renovating, like we wouldn't need to change anything in those blue or orange areas, right?
That's correct.
We could kind of, okay, so we're not having to like redo anything that we just spent money to do.
Right.
That makes sense to me. I think we just need to communicate that to the town and say, I agree. We need to communicate it to the town. I agree with both Christine and Humira at the same time. Communicate it to the town. We don't have the money to do both. We have to get the girls done. We'll make the adjustments to the boys to make it accessible and more workable, and then add it to our capital plan for wherever it makes sense in the future to say we'd like to get the boys' room done by X date. That makes sense.
I second that. I think you said it really well. And I think that gets to Humira's legitimate point. Like, let's be clear about what we're doing. I don't know the rules about this. I mean, this must always happen, right? You get a allocation from the town and prices change. And so what do you typically do? So I think communicating. I love that idea of that external bathroom or the internal bathroom that you can access externally. That's a great idea, having spent a lot of time on those fields. So I hear you, Tara. I don't want to redo it, but if we sort of do that, those pieces and trying to wall that off and then fix. I like Humira's point too. Are there other ADA things in there that are cost effective we can get done to add into this? So I support what Tara said.
So I did hear a motion and a second. And I also, before we vote, I want to ask what venues can we communicate best with the town? I know town meeting just happened, but is this a select board meeting where our Chris, maybe you and Annie and maybe Christine are presenting sort of like update on the capital plan and this project? Is it also a finance committee? Is it a meeting of the both of them? Or maybe it's two different meetings, but those are the two key entities that I think we have to get with so that they are aware and behind and at least understanding why we're going down this road, so that when we come to a town meeting and we're asking for additional funding or giving an update, that at least the town boards are understanding and in support of our logic.
I would think we could do a select board meeting. I don't think that, I think that would reach quite a few people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Have you had any of these conversations with the capital planning folks? Like with other projects even, where things go over and you have to reassess? Yeah.
No, because fortunately they haven't gone over anywhere near the amount that this one did, and you find savings from somewhere else to offset the difference, and
Yes.
It works okay. But when you start talking, I mean, in that initial but that it's certainly a great thing to have this approved.
Indeed it is. And thank you, Tara, for all your work and presenting to the town and fielding the questions that came up. And it wasn't It wasn't a fait accompli. There were some really good questions, but we had enthusiastic support from the community, and that was really nice to see. Thank you. Thank you to the town.
Mm.
Uh,
I just wanted to say, Tara, you knocked it out of the park. You did a great job.
Indeed, you did.
And we did get the official letter as well today from the CPA that the funds are approved at the special town meeting. So I believe I can share this email with you that attaches the letter from the CPA that were approved. So
Wonderful. Thank
that was
you.
nice to get.
All right, moving next to the business manager report. We have expense, revolving grants, and the geothermal project updates. Chris, that's you again.
Okay, yeah, I'm a little busy tonight. So
Hi.
we have the expense report first. There are some items that are over budget, obviously, and a number of them that are under. Again, with grants this year, I mean, it was just so slow, really, where we had a number of expenses just being charged to the regular budget, and we need to transfer those out. Literally 2 weeks ago, we finally got Title I, Title II, and Title IV grants approved, and the 240 SPED grant, which is, you know, a really big grant that we get, and we get it every year. So we budget accordingly. We budget to use that, but all of the expenses have been charged to the regular budget because we needed to pay the bills, and you cannot charge to the grant until you actually have it. So, you know, we had to kind of hold off on that. So we're working on preparing the transfers to be done. But we did go through basically the entire budget. And both with the expenses to date and the encumbrances that we have, and then some that, you know, there were no encumbrances, but like salaries, for example, that we don't encumber the funds, but we do, you know, when I build the new budget form, I have to go through and replace all of the, you know, teachers and staff members that left with the new ones that replace them, update the salaries. So we did all of that. The current salaries that we have right now are, you know, we used that in our calculation just to make sure, you know, all right, where do we stand with the budget? You know, I mean, it's one thing to look at a report, but sometimes things like the salaries, you know, that we can't encumber, it becomes a little trickier, you know. So we worked on that, and yes, we're still in good shape. So that's certainly nice to see. It'll be better shape once we do these transfers out of the to the grants. But I can answer any questions anyone might have. I just wanted to give that brief explanation.
Any questions for Chris? All right, seeing none, let's move to the revolving accounts.
Okay, so the revolving accounts, you know, I mean, I think the thing that stands out here obviously is the lunch account that is showing almost a $47,000 negative balance. We still have yet to get that June revenue for the lunch. You know, we get every month we get reimbursed from the state for lunches served, and obviously with the free lunch statewide, you expect to be reimbursed for the lunches you've served. But unfortunately, the state ran out of lunch money last year, and they needed to appropriate money this year, and we have still not received that. So, and you know, when I asked Kelly, the food services director, to check on it, that was what she came back with. Was they told me that you know, we will get it, but they need to appropriate the funds. The funds have all been depleted, and they need to appropriate it. So that's a pretty decent amount of money. You know, almost $22,000. And then the October revenues were not posted either. So, you know, we'll have, I don't know, another 27 or 28,000 probably for October revenues. And so, you know, between the two, that'll put us back in the positive, not by a huge amount, but certainly better than negative. So we're kind of just waiting for those revenues to get posted by the town, the October, and waiting for that June money to come in. So when it does, we'll see a drastic change in the amount of the lunch account. Athletic, really, not a heck of a lot of change. As you know, we really don't get to see much in terms of deposits to the athletic revolving until basketball season. And so, we'll start seeing deposits shortly going into there. Free school revolving, again, It's starting to build a balance now that we've started to get some revenues in, and it'll continue to do just that. Student activity, as we know, goes up and down depending on the trips that might be, field trips that might be being paid out of it, or whatever else the funds have been raised for. Hadley Kids, you can see $40,000 in a balance, so that's showing to be a pretty good program in terms of being self-sustaining, certainly, and building a balance. And the school choice, you can see there was a decent drop. We did pay the playgrounds of $289,000, I believe it was, and out of that, 100,000 is appropriated to the it was 297,000, excuse me, and 100,000 was appropriated by the school committee to use school choice funds. The remainder will be paid from the playground funds. Most of it will be paid back. I sent out the invoice. Most will be paid back immediately. We did have a couple of donations that were split. Part of it this year, part of it next year, and so we have to just wait until those donations come in to get the remaining funds paid back. But we're talking only a few $1,000s. It's not a huge amount of money. So, and the donations, it's another 25,000 from Belize, so that would more than make up the cost right there. And then we have was it Greenfield Savings, Tara, that
Greenfield
that gave
Cooperative.
Greenfield Cooperative, okay, that gave $4,000 a year, I think it was, for 5 years.
3,000 for 5. So we
Okay.
have another 12.
All right, and so we'll get that next year as well. So that will make up the difference. But I just that explains why the balance has decreased so much. And when we get those payments in, it'll bring it back up again.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Chris on revolving? All right, seeing none, let's move to the next one, Chris.
Okay, so the grants report. This is the first time, really, as you know, that I'm sorry. I just think I see a typo. I spelled Esser wrong. Don't ask me how. I apologize for that. But they've been so slow to award these funds that you have those big grants like the 240 SPED I mentioned, where it's $142,000 and we've spent $200. So obviously that will take off in a big way very soon as I transfer expenses to the grants. But decent number of grants here, and there are actually more on the way. So Ann's been very busy writing these grants, and we've been spending them down. So that's it's certainly a lifesaver in terms of what we can offer as a district, and we'll continue to be applying expenses to the grants to make sure that the funds are used.
Thank you. Huge thanks to Annie for all her work on grants. And on
I wonder, and this is tongue in
please.
cheek, but is she applying for 1,000? And all we see are the successes, and so we think she's just perfect. It's really impressive. I mean, it's like every week there's a whole new couple of grants. It's amazing.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not easy, quite honestly,
No.
for these grants. It takes a decent amount of work.
Yeah.
And so, that's certainly a feather in her cap that she's able to get so many of them for Hadley.
It's great.
Indeed it is. All right. Any questions about the grants? Right, seeing none, let's move to the geothermal project update.
Okay, so not a lot of update here, other than they did reach out today and ask me to bump out the expectation of completion of the design by a month or two. They're waiting to see what we want to do for the locker rooms, excuse me. And as I told them, whether we do the boys' locker room or not, the heating has to get done. Certainly. And so they were kind of just waiting to see, are we going to do one side? Are we going to do both sides? And he told me today that if I can let them know ASAP what we're doing, that will be helpful. But yeah, unfortunately, when I reached out today and I said, I'd like to get an update, and he says, well, when would you like it finished and we can work from there? And I said, well, we'd like it finished now, because that was the timeline. then I decided rather than emailing back and forth, I'll just call him. And he says, I'm very glad you reached out. There's just no way we're going to be able to get that done, now. We need a month or two to complete it. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean in terms of the TA study? And he said, well, that should be able to be done in 2 months, which would still put us, in time to apply for MSBA funding if we choose to do that, and B, still get it for next year's special town meeting. So, we're okay as far as that goes.
Chris, can we strongly urge them to make a January timeframe?
Sure.
Such you are able to present to us, and maybe they're there as well, presenting to us the findings by our January meeting, which would be the 4th Monday of January.
That's the TA study findings?
Anything that would help us make our decisions around what we're going to the town with, and what we're going to MSBA with. I think that, we wanted it in this year so that we could be in good stead for that process. So I think that, we're inching closer to missing a window. And so if we can hold fast to that January meeting where we're all understanding what has been, what their findings are, and we're able to strategize about how we're going to fund it and when we're going to initiate the project, I think that would be, it would put us in a better position. So if we could get back to them and just ask them to make a January timeline in time, not for you to receive the report on a Monday, the day of the school committee meeting, but rather a week and a half prior, so you can wrap your head around those results and that they're able to come and present, and let's get that on their calendar.
Sure.
And that's what we do, is we send them a calendar invite for that January and tell them.
Mhm. Yep, I can email them as soon as this meeting's over.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
One thing I think we need to revisit though is I need to look back and see what tax credits we're expecting. And so with the change of administration, some of those tax credits and their implementation are in question. So
They are, yeah.
we'll need to, January, we won't know, so if it, obviously, as this goes into past January 20th, we'll have a better picture about the application of those and the assurance of those, because some of those are based on IRS guidance, which isn't formalized, and there's particular rules about how that guidance can be rescinded or revised, and that's going to take some time. So we might not be able to decide fully until sometime next year, because we're not going to know if those tax credits are still applicable. In that sense, it might be helpful to have tax advice, because it's, I think that's the only way we thought this project would ever be feasible. And if some of those things are in question.
I'd love to get Sarah Ross and her opinion on things, because she'll be most connected to what the word on the street is, because last I read, a lot of red states were deploying wind and geothermal projects and taking advantage of those opportunities to diversify their energy sources. And so if this becomes a bipartisan welcomed of ushering in additional energy sources, and it's utility companies that are engaging in the projects. And Paul, better. You're in this game, but I thought I heard something in past presentations about, well, direct pay might be a new mechanism for money coming to towns, but the notion of this kind of credit has long existed for solar and other such things. And so there was some optimism that no matter which administration it would be, but I haven't stayed in touch with this specific thing being on the chopping block. I know they have lots of plans and they intend to hit it within the first 100 days. But yeah, well, I'll be curious about that.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. Somebody who makes his living off of renewable energy, but yeah, and I think who knows, right? And I think it's going to take a while. It might take a little bit to flesh out. And so, given that it's fundamental to the feasibility of this project, and Sarah's definitely be a good one to tap into, but we might actually need specific tax advice. I know, I have a buddy who's at Amherst and with their geothermal project, they have very expensive tax advisors that are advising them on the future of these tax credits. Not to say that we need to hire the KPMGs of the world, but we need to be helpful to have some advice potentially down the road. But I'm hopeful, like you, Humira, that this stuff persists.
All right. Well, then another shout out. If you're a tax advisor in the town of Hadley and you want to help us
You understand federal IRS or Noble Energy tax credits?
please
Yes.
be in touch with Chris Desjardins so that we can get your assistance in making this happen for our.
Or Chris, you could learn up about it, become the expert, and we'll just depend on your tax advice.
Sure, in my spare time, I'll brush up on it.
There you go. Remember, what was the last time we asked you about buses and you became an expert on school buses? So now next thing is IRS tax credit.
Anne and I often joke about the things we never dreamed we'd be
Yeah.
experts on that we now are. So,
Yeah, totally.
You're
sometimes
modeling-
you're just surprised.
Modeling lifelong
Totally.
learning, which is so important. Thank you. All right, thanks for that update on geothermal. Any questions for Chris on this project? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move to the next part of the agenda, which is, well, first of all, thank you, Chris, for all of that long list of presentations. Appreciate you being here. We're going to move to action items. We've already accepted the donation. We need to approve the payroll and expense warrants for September and October. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. We're going to approve the school committee minutes of August 26th and September 23rd. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
I want to add, thank you for your flexibility around the October meeting. I found myself in a medical emergency with my father, and I wasn't able to make it, and I think Paul, as vice chair, you were in the air and hadn't yet landed, and so we were trying to figure out a way to make it happen. But I thank you, team, for allowing us to cancel that, and apologies to the public for not having that meeting. And I'm really glad that we were able to meet tonight. Okay, we're going to move next to school committee updates and general announcements. Tara, tell us about the playground, CPAC, and CES.
Okay, so I think we covered the playground, so I will leave that at that. CPAC meets in 2 weeks, and they sent me their calendar invite, and I should be able to make it, so I'll report back at the next one. And CES also meets, I think, December 13th, so I will report back for January on the December meeting. There was none in November.
Terrific, thank you. Item 6B is me, an update on MASC and finance. On the finance side, you heard all the updates on the capital and so forth, so I won't go into that. But I did go to the Massachusetts Association of School Committee members conference in November. This is always a really rich opportunity to learn what's going on around the state, but also deepen your own understanding of the role of the school committee and all the things that you can do to improve schools. There are 2 sessions that were excellent. I looked for sessions that I wouldn't have gone to in my first few years. Example, one on cybersecurity. And I'll give you a highlight. Norton Schools, Norton, Massachusetts, 2 days before the end of the school year, students are in finals on their computers, and the internet goes down. And all the tech people are just not able to do anything to get it back up. And they realize, I think this is a bigger issue. And in fact, when they dug, they found a ransom note for $1 million to turn the internet back on. That was an effort that took 2 months. Thankfully, that school and that town had cyber security insurance, which is a thing. It's and those policies are exhaustive in what they cover. They had a plan in place, but they found that that plan was woefully inadequate. Can you imagine if everything is internet enabled, even printing, door locks, security, you're having to go, back to, from scratch. And so you're needing, actual printed copies of, your FBI cyber crimes unit and your local such and such and your insurance. And it's pretty complex. This panel was excellent. It had 3 technology folks and 2 non-technology folks, who was the principal and the the head of student. I can't even recall, but it was another senior leader, but neither of them were technology sophisticated, and they were instrumental in 2 months later, 2.5 months later, bringing it back online. They did not pay a ransom, and they were able to get it back online. Have asked that panel to recreate the panel in a Division 5 event. So basically, I would hold a Zoom event and invite all school committee members from the Valley, and probably extend it to other districts as well, so that we can host it again, record it, and share it more broadly, because it's very valuable information. Another session that I found equally powerful was on special education funding. And this was from a CPA who had worked for a very large district. And I called her a genius at the end of the meeting, and I wasn't alone, because she was just so well versed in the matters of how to structure your special education, what your cost estimates are, because, just the difference between a plus or a slash, or a and or a or, means either you're getting a good percentage of that special education funding reimbursed by the state, or you're not. And as you know, it falls on the towns, and special education can swing wildly, right? Depending on what your needs are from year to year. So from recommendations on how to approach that, to having a special fund, what's the fund that the town has? It's not an emergency fund, but it's help me out here. It's a stabilization fund. So a special education stabilization fund, and I thought to myself, well, I don't think we have that, and we might want to think about what that would look like for us, and how we would get it funded. But if we were to have sort of one family move in that needed especially unique services, that would be a huge, hit to the town/schools, and we'd want a way to cover that, because we're legally obligated to. So it's another thing for us to think about. And I also asked her to consider coming onto a Zoom event so that I could present it to you all and others, and record that and share that more broadly as well. And the last thing I'll share is that I've been involved in a number of discussions in the last year, in the board role that I have as Division 5 chair, on advocacy for funding. The state has not met its revenue projections, and we're all feeling it, right? That's what we heard on town meeting floor, is about those expected revenues from and the cherry sheet from the state. But rural districts are feeling it especially hard. And, we fall into that rural district category. We have a very generous town. We have a tax base that we can tap into. But we, in terms of number of students per, capita and per geography, whatever the criteria are, we fit the rural schools category, but we're not like other districts in our state that are making hard choices between laying off, 5 teachers, 20 teachers in Amherst and Northampton versus having police and fire. And it's actually in some towns really pitting the schools and those municipal departments against one another, and it's untenable. This is like year one of something that is going to get even worse in the next 2-3 years. So advocating for rural funding, and there was a big study that was done that said there needs to be a $60 million rural funding package, and it came in at, I think it was like 16 million this last year, which is woefully inadequate. In this new legislative cycle, we're hopeful that that will actually get passed, but it may or may not. And so I would like to come back to you all with a letter that we're trying to get in front of Mara Healy, the governor, because she's actively working on her package for next year, which, that's the starting point. And if enough of us send letters from rural districts, and again, Hadley may not get the worst of it, but a lot of our surrounding towns are getting the worst of it. And people are moving out of those towns. Students are sitting on buses for an hour without internet, unable to do homework, unable to be athletes, unable to take jobs. Those folks, they come shop in Hadley, right? They might drive an hour to come shop in Hadley on the weekend. So there'll be a ripple effect, no doubt. So we do need to sort of work together to make sure our regions are strong. And this Pioneer Valley and Berkshire community is, we need to work together to make sure that happens. So that was overwhelmingly passed in the delegate assembly, and I would like to put together a letter and get it in front of you, and hopefully get it to Mara Healy's desk before the holidays. I'd like to, before I tell you about some of the other advocacy positions, I would like to get your thoughts on that. Is anyone in support or opposed to sending a letter about rural schools to Mara Healy?
I'm in support of it. I think it's a good idea, and I think we have to work together as not just our community, but support our surrounding communities. So yeah, I'm in support of it.
Thank you, Tara.
Well, no, I'm in support.
Thank you, Christine.
Agreed.
All right, Ethan.
I guess I want more details, but I mean, I think that the principle is, since we're all funded by a property tax base essentially, or town-based incomes, that if the town incomes are decreasing, the schools are decreasing, we've got a minimum effective dose that we all need. I get it. Yeah.
Declining.
I'm just wondering why rural is different than urban. And
there was a Student Opportunity Act that was funded to help urban schools, and it's actually benefiting. They're like, those districts are finally doing okay. And we all advocated for that. We wanted Holyoke and Boston and Worcester and those other Lawrence, those communities to be and Springfield to be better funded, and they got that. But at the same time, rural schools are really struggling, like unlike ever before. So that's why. And I can send you some really good information about what the dynamics are that help
that'd be great.
Put your mind around it. And so I'll share information about that with you, as well as the draft of a letter that I'd like to send on behalf of Hadley School Committee. Okay, great. All right, so I have my marching orders there. Thank you. The same on the vocational school transportation advocacy letter. I asked Annie about this, and she said, very important issue for our district. We spend a lot of money on vocational school transportation. So the state says, originally they say that, and legally, I think they're obligated to spend 100, like give you 100%, but they only give us 18%. which means that we are asking for the town to do it. So our town would not be in the situation of making the hard choices and trade-offs and, like becoming more frugal if in fact the state did their job of funding it at 100%, right? Because students are legally obligated to get transportation to school opportunities that they're legally obligated to have, right? So if they get to go to a vocational school, they should be able to have busing. So I have in my inbox a letter from Cummington schools and other area districts are sending us examples of the letters that they've sent, and I can send this to you along with a draft of something that we can send as well. So vocational transportation and special education oftentimes, and this is a big issue as well, oftentimes the cost of sending a child to a special education program or a different school will cost more than the school tuition itself, which is, it's insane. That's a whole nother issue of busing and how few busing providers there are. And you'll put out a bid and you'll get one, one quote. And so schools are asking the state to look into what's going on there. Why isn't there more choice? What's going on with the competition? But going down the line, so that is I don't know if that one is as urgent. It might be. I think they're trying to get it into the Governor Healy the first package. So I'll send you that letter as well as a draft, and I will. I'm planting the seed now, and I will consider that to be like an email vote, which I don't know, other boards do, so I'm not sure why we don't do email votes, but we'll do that, and we'll talk about that another time. So this is one that you are familiar with. Back in 2018, we wrote a letter to DESE because the Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion School presently has, let's see, 584 seats, and they'd like to increase enrollment by 100 seats. They've just acquired, I think, another 80,000 square feet. Another 100 seats is going to harm Hadley enrollment. They will be going for Hadley students. All our area schools have sent letters urging the state not to allow that 100 increase. We did the same back in 2018 under Heather Klesch's leadership. We all voted and urged the state to vote against, the DESE to vote against the expansion request. And I would like you all to consider sending a similar letter urging the state not to give the Pioneer Valley, the Chinese Immersion School, another 100 seats. I'm going to pause there and get your feedback on that.
I'm supportive of sending the letter again.
Thank you, Paul.
I am too.
Thanks, Tara.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So look for that in your inboxes before Thanksgiving, but I'm going to ask you for your feedback by next Monday/Tuesday. And there are other initiatives having to do with the charter school funding formula. We don't get back nearly as much as we send. So our municipal, Hadley is whacked a lot of money. So 58% of the money that the state gives Hadley, 58% goes to charter schools, be it the Chinese Immersion School or the Performing Arts, Pioneer Valley, the Performing PVPA. That's 58% that we could be, using for our own operating budget and taxing our residents less, asking them to make fewer hard choices about what things get funded. And so I don't have a letter for you yet. I was on a meeting with a number of area school committee members and leaders, as well as Joe Comerford and her her chief of staff about the bills that the legislation she intends to file on charter school funding. And she is all ears. She knows that this is another thing that is really hitting our area districts hard. And you know, I would like for us to also put in our support for that. The timing on this, we have a little bit more timing. So you won't see a letter from me, on it right away. There are other districts in our area that are, there's at least 3 that have change.org petitions, Northampton, Amherst, and I think maybe East Hampton, that are trying to get funding, emergency funding for this fiscal year, the one that we're in. And Joe Comerford is urging us to think about the long road, to think about legislation and also funding, but for this next funding cycle, that this one that's already passed is gone. So the timeline on this is probably in the next couple of months. I'm going to pause and get your feedback on the charter school funding issue and whether I should work on a draft and support that effort.
And I'm a little unclear as to what, so we're pushing back what? What are we trying to do?
Well, there are some who say that the state should be just paying outright for it. If
Okay.
you want charter schools, charter schools were a wonderful, excellent, an excellent experiment. There have been many of them formed. But they haven't necessarily trickled back innovation to public schools in the way that they were originally intended to. Also put a cap on how many you're creating, because at present they're able to start more, and that means more funding from municipalities get siphoned off to new schools. Again, of the multiple millions of dollars that we get to Hadley, 58% of that doesn't go to Hadley Public Schools. Public school funding that does not go to the public school, it goes to charter schools. So the idea would be to get behind some charter school reform. Also, there's like a funding formula that is wildly broken. So I don't have very specific actions at the moment. I guess what I'm asking for is like a pulse of, charter schools are taking funding away from Hadley. We should look at ways that the state should fund charter schools differently in a way that it's not taking away from Hadley. Versus charter schools are great. We should have more. Or we should be sharing our Hadley funding with charter schools. So I guess that is some feedback I'd love to have from you all.
So this is something that comes up, I feel like almost every year we have a conversation about charter school funds and how much is allocated away from Hadley in order to support it. So I'm in support of you exploring more, whatever we need to do in order to get a letter form to sign and show our support for our towns getting more funding. And I just also want to take the opportunity to say thank you for putting all these together. It's time consuming. So thank you for going to the meeting, and then thank you for bringing it back to us and putting it together. It's all very important. So thank you.
Appreciate it, Tara. Thank you.
And yeah, thanks, Humira. And I think that I can't say I fully understand the funding process, and I know Annie's tried to explain it to us several times, but it does seem broken. It needs revisiting.
I'll take the action of bringing more information and things that y'all can read to wrap your head around it, because it's the average person doesn't know this, and a lot of school committee members around the state don't know it either.
I'm in agreement with the rest of the group.
Thank you, Ethan.
And if there's anything you think we should read, just, send out copies, and then this week we can sort of catch up.
Great, Christine. Thank you. Okay, I think that is the list of them. So stay tuned for some emails from me and I will get moving on that. Let me just quickly go back to the agenda and uh, item 6C is Fields project.
Yeah,
Paul is,
I don't have anything particular. I know we talked about the sign, so Kristen and I will work on the sign, so I don't have nothing to add
Great.
there.
all right, thank you. Christine, anything on capital? We did talk about capital tonight.
Yes, no, I think we're supposed to be having a meeting before, just to sort of work out a couple of things like on the, planning committee itself and how to address the upcoming challenges. There's a lot of big things that are being talked about for spring, so yeah, I'll let you know what happens.
Thank you, Christine. We don't have a student representative update, but we do have a new student representative, and Annie will introduce her in December. Looking forward to that. There is Annie sent me some information about an event that had to do with Supper for Sudan. She said, if you want to mention this tonight, the Diversity Club Supper for Sudan event is happening, and it's December 5th, 5:30 to 7:30 at Hopkins Academy. There will be food, lots of food, and all proceeds will go to the International Rescue Committee. I urge you all to go. General announcements. David Phil, our select board liaison, is not here. Look forward to hosting him one day soon. We do not have executive session. Our next meeting dates, we're looking at December 16th so that we don't run into the Christmas holidays. December 16th is a Monday. It's the third Monday of the month. There will be a policy subcommittee at 4 p.m. and the regular school committee at 5:30. And just before we depart, I'd like to say that I just have a tremendous amount of gratitude for you all. We did a lot of wonderful things this year, and we have some ambitious plans. I love how we're thinking, and we're thinking big and strategically. Paul, I want to commend you on some amazing work around the fields, and the fields look gorgeous. And I can't wait for our next baseball season out there. Tara, what an incredible job you did on the playgrounds and in lightning speed. Just truly remarkable. And just the joy on those students' faces at that opening. It's really pretty remarkable. So look forward to stepping on that new rubber surface next summer. And Christine and Ethan, thank you all for your incredible hard work, especially on the policy subcommittee, something that doesn't often go seen, but it's a whole nother meeting and you're going through lots of policies and thinking through important issues that you bring to us, vetted and carefully thought through. So thank you. And huge thanks to the staff, Chris, Jen, Annie, all the educators. Happy Thanksgiving.
We have a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah, definitely.
Happy Thanksgiving.
We really do.
And thank you for your leadership.
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks, Amara.
thanks, Tamara.
Jada, Tara.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Right. Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah.
So moved.
All right, all in favor.
Again,
Hi.
hi.
Hey,
All right, 7:15, not bad.
Good job.
Thanksgiving.
Wonderful break, guys.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.